contextualize, I want to have you run quickly with me through what's on the next page, actually 2 pages. The first set of categories replicate what's actually in the book and pertain particularly to students in church. And I itemize these because it's sort of easy to forget just what incredible pressures seminaries went through in the last quarter of the 20th century. Many of you could name a good chunk of them, and you may be able to identify some that I haven't listed here. But here are the ones, real quickly. The civil rights, anti-war, anti-poverty initiatives, the integration of our schools gradually, but also the white flight. And one of the things that you folks should know is that aside from the 2 recently founded ones, Methesco and our friends in St. Paul, all of our official schools, at least on the Methodist side, were put in university contexts. Some of them, many of them constitutive parts of universities initially. Now some more distantly related, so Aleph and Denver and Garrett and Northwestern and Claremont and Southern Cal. The universities are no longer United Methodist, but initially they were. So it's really important, I think, to see this. Growing numbers of women among students and gradually among faculty. The disparate vocational and learning agendas folks brought, the division of American Protestantism, and especially the liberal causes, ecumenical, interreligious things. Diminished denominational consciousness. You folks probably aware of the fact that, in the church generally, people, take the signs down, but we are hyper-denominational in boards of ordained ministry. I mean, so it's a very strange sort of duality with which we lead. The diverse, increasingly diverse student body, including those who, declare for ministry 5 days after they've been converted. The interplay of various programs and so forth. And then at the bottom in the next page then, the way in which the faculties attempt to live with this, and I'm very conscious of it, having played various faculty and administrative roles. So let me run through with that. So faculties tried to cope. They underwent sensitivity training or did immersion trips. They revised their programs. They experimented with new models. They attempted to live with the diverse student cohorts. They taught out of various perspectives. They let the doctoral programs inform their teaching. They contextualized in various ways, launched new fields, created or recreated vocational tracks, and undertook new joint programs, and gradually embraced new delivery systems and so forth. So schools went through a lot of trauma, and I think there are many folks who think that we're still in that. I think by and large we've come through it and are fairly well stabilized, but we still are struggling with issues having to do with formation of our folk, and are increasingly expecting that to take place sort of prior to folks coming in and during, but to some extent afterwards. The programming is really quite diverse. If someone goes through Duke, you can come out with 3 different theological perspectives depending on who teaches the basic course the year that you take it. And that's true in so many of our places. Because our faculties, and you're right in the midst of this, our faculties are not primarily United Methodists. In fact, if you look at Duke, we have a slight majority of United Methodists, but not among the tenured folk. And frankly, boards of ordained ministry hurt their cause by the constraints that they put on folk who wanted to maintain their orders or progress toward orders but also pursue a PhD. Several of you have heard this story before. One of my favorite stories is the daughter of Albert Ainer, who was a United Methodist, but head of the Black African School in North Carolina. And at one of the recruiting events at the American Academy of Religion, I saw her, and she was finishing a PhD in, I think, New Testament at Union. And, you know, an African American to teach biblical studies on a seminary faculty, what an incredible appointment would that be. And so I said, how exciting that really, when are you going to get through and what's going on? She said, well, I'm being ordained. I said, oh, great. She said, as a Presbyterian, because my board of ordained ministry would not accept me. So, you know, her life now is as a Presbyterian, though her family was in Methodist missions, and her father at Drew, and then in North Carolina at Hood. And you think, why are we so short-sighted? So advising is really much more complex when you don't have a fully Methodist faculty. It's really a different challenge. So I want to move us on in just a minute to this last stage, counseled again with new horizons, new clientele, new programming. But first, let me go back through these stages that we've just visited, just to get you a sense of not just them as stages, but of how they lived on, say up into the 1950s in our church. So, counseled, how? By being baptized and taken from a Methodist family to a church, being brought into the Sunday school from the get-go, being nurtured in a family that was Methodist, and going on to vacation Bible school when a little older. The collegial stage, it seems to me, nicely represented by the MYF and then successive entities of that sort. Conference, our camps, Methodist camps, I recall those myself. Collegiate, you name it. For me, the great example is Wofford, because years ago you could take a bus down there and put 20 students on and just haul them up there for entry to Duke Divinity School the next year. I mean, the numbers that were flowing through our system were just incredible. Seminary, well, I have to take Duke. My dad was there before I, all 3 degrees from there. The synthesized, what role, who was playing that? The Methodist faculty. Contextualized for Duke, again, the Duke Endowment put folks out in small churches across the state from the get-go for a full summer, paid for their housing, and gave them a stipend when they returned, and then conference life carried on. So, you know, up into the 1950s, you could look at North Carolina and you could see not only that these stages had occurred, albeit, you know, Duke was not founded in the 1830s, but you could see their interplay if you were really careful. All these stages that Methodism had set out successively to form persons for ministry were alive but functioning in a slightly different way in different contexts. Well, let me tell you my own story, because I know you have been wanting, you know, Okay, now to some extent, my dad was, I was born when he was a pastor in Cullowhee, North Carolina, and, you know, Methodist, grew up Methodist, so to some extent, and, you know, I'm subjected to all the Sunday school and things of that sort. You know, there was a sense in which counsel was there for me, and I went through God and Country. So I had it, but I think in some ways it really wasn't until I got to Drew as post-PhD that I really began to see what the counseling meant with respect to the exercise of ministry. So that was late. Collegial, a little earlier. Worked in East Harlem Protestant Parish when I was at Union, went on the student and racial ministry in the summer, worked with classmates. So there was some of the collegial aspects of it, not during, not early on, but once I had decided that I was actually going to go to seminary and was there. The conference, the sort of guidance as to what it really means to be in ministry, well, again, I don't think that happened until late 1960s, actually 1970s, when I was at Drew, and was at a Methodist church on the corner there that had the president of the university and all the deans and a good chunk of the faculty and some of the college faculty, and I was really brought into a community that would sort of guided me in my own reading on things. And I was not a Methodist scholar there. My dissertation was on English Unitarianism of all things, so I had to learn this stuff from the get-go. Collegiate, I went to Wesleyan University, but it was not Methodist. So it was really through Operation Crossroads Africa and other things that I got a sense of what it really meant to be in a collegiate setting. Seminary, that was formative, certainly formative for me, though it wasn't, it wasn't a United Methodist school. The synthesized, well, actually, I don't think that occurred until I got to Duke, which was, a second, I was after 17 years of being in theological education. I got to Duke, and I began to see how CPE and their field program and other things interplayed in a significant way. And so the contextualization I really learned late. And the counsel really comes, as you'll see in a minute, in preparation for this lecture. Now, I want to just take a little bit of an excursus in terms of my own career and tell you why the things at the bottom of the page there on 3 are kind of a wonderment to me. When I went to Drew, and I could still do this if I went to teach there now, but when I went to Drew, I lived on campus, had an apartment with full cooking facilities, but there was a student body eating daily, so I could go across and eat in the cafeteria if I need be. The seminary hall was about 150 yards. In my office on the second floor, and the chapel right down the right. My favorite classroom, 2 doors down the other way. Best colleagues there. Unfortunately, the men's room was 2 flights down. I had to run there often. The library was not in that building, but 2 buildings over. The historic building at that point housed our admissions operation in the dean, and I was associate dean there for a while. So actually in Meade Hall that burned and has been rebuilt. The library was next with all of our incredible Methodist holdings. Years later, the Archives and History Institution went over there. And if I was really farsighted, again, I could walk to the dean's house or the president's house, both on campus, and then over to the church for services, and I oversaw their nursery for a while. And conference headquarters was next door with the DS and Bishop. So if my wife would do the shopping, I could just stay on campus. Now, if you go to Candler, which was my next, not my next stop, but I want to talk to next, with a brand new building, you can, if you get into, eat at home and, sleep there, but you get to the complex there, and library and faculty offices and teaching space and just wonderful study areas in one building, and across a little plaza is Cannon Chapel with a bookstore and a luncheon thing. And then if you're brave, you can walk elsewhere for lunch, but everything right in that complex. Divinity School, Divinity School even better in some respects. Again, you have to eat and sleep at home, but on a rainy day, if I get in there, everything is there. Men's room right next door, the copy room across the hall, a library up one flight, the bookstore around the corner, lunchroom next, and this grand new chapel up there. If I'm really open-minded and want to think about things Methodist, I can go down to the Methodist Randy Maddox and folks down one flight. So several flights up, religion department, the same thing. So I get in there, everything is just there. So you can see that those boldings there, my faculty administrative seminary tour. So getting to theological education meant getting on campus at Drew, into Candler's buildings in the complex, and simply to the Duke Divinity complex. Now, of course, unless you actually got to be a chaplain at Duke or Candler or Drew, you'd have to go off campus for field education. Did CPE, you would have to go elsewhere on the university campuses. But for the programming, what really struck me as I was getting ready for this was how well we had brought into a building complex the systems that would prepare persons for ministry, and how all one really had to do was just get into the building and do all the things that were there. And it was incredible what was then possible, because it was all simply right there. But as I was getting ready for this, and this is the third time I've had a chance to talk about this here. But as I was getting ready for it, I thought, have I told this story right? And as a firm advocate for keeping our focus on North America, am I being fair? And so, here I'm in Duke Divinity School, and everything is there. If you come here, you can prepare for ministry, and you just do this in the building and you go out. And I thought, this is a building that sees the role of forming persons for ministry in the United Methodist Church and in the U.S. in an extraordinary way. But then, I just thought about what happens if I wander around a bit. So if I come out of my office and turn right, and look at that list down there, I come to the office for leadership education, or one of the offices for leadership education at Duke Divinity School, but it actually should be leadership education from Duke Divinity School, because its primary clientele are young, outstanding clergy, denomination and other Christian institutions, wider communities through its online publication, and denominational leadership. These are not folks who are in the MDiv program. And it's called Denominational Leadership Equips Denominational Staff Members who have previously served congregations with tools and strategies to effectively navigate the complexities and changing landscape of institutional leadership. Now, if I'm really thinking creatively, and staffing is there, but also downtown, I believe there are 10 staff persons in all involved in that. If I turn the other way, come out of my office and turn left, I come to the Center for Reconciliation. I'd love to chat with the woman next door, but she might as well be doing programming in East Africa. The program there serves, it's called the Great Lakes Initiative, serves Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. And they've just created a center for Christians from Kenya, Japan, China, and Hong Kong. So again, programming that is not for Duke Divinity students, or even just to have them involved abroad, but actually programming aimed at persons in other religious community. If I'm really adventurous and go one more door over, I hit the Hispanic House of Studies, which of course does a lot with our Hispanic students there, for both North Carolina and Western North Carolina conferences. But it's also running programs in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Peru. The first two are actually co-sponsored by GBHEM and GBGM. The first meets twice a year for a week for students. This is the one in El Salvador, taking staff down there, train 60 students per unit. The one in Guatemala also has 60 students, meets more briefly for 2.5-day sessions, and the Peruvian one is cooperative with the Methodist Church of Peru. The same office cluster are the thriving rural communities, which offers some help for our own students, but often reaches beyond them. And if I'm really feeling adventuresome, I can go upstairs and find the Duke Clergy Health Initiative. It has an $18 million, 7-year program to improve the health and well-being of United Methodist clergy in North Carolina. The Theology, Medicine, and Culture endeavor features transdisciplinary conversation and practical collaboration, I'm quoting, at the intersections of religion, theology, and healthcare, and draws faculty from theology, medicine, nursing, and public health for various outreach. The Duke Initiatives in Theology and Arts does some things on campus, but it also has an on-site program in Cambridge, England, looking to create a new musical based on the Passion and the Gospel of Luke. The Summer Institute for Reconciliation involves various publics, not students, for sustained program. The Lifelong Learning Program includes some things for clergy, some for laity, some for institutional leaders, all. And then it has a Youth Academy, one of the Lilly funded things that brings high school kids. So if you look at these things together, what's really impressive, and was in some ways a discovery for me as I get ready to do the lecture on this book, was that though I wanted to stay on campus and look to the U.S. as the horizon for this, what's really striking is how broad our schools are now in their thinking about this. I figure there's something like between 25 and 30 folks who are primarily or even maybe full-time. Yeah, you could pass those around, Myron. These initiatives, they're not, you just take a quick look. The important thing to see is that it's listed at the top as one of the primary sites on Duke's home page. So pass that around if you would, because there's just one there. So, you know, of these programs, only 4 are exclusive. Those ones that are listed there, the 18 initiatives, 4 are really aimed at divinity students. The Center for Studies in the Wesleyan Tradition is both off-campus and on-campus, both degree and non-degree. But that incredible array then of folks are really for programming that goes quite beyond the divinity school. And it's remarkable in its size, its scope, its expenditure. Again, I say 25 to 30 full-time folk there. Now, what to me is striking, and Myron and I had a conversation on this just before I spoke. What's striking to me is that I didn't know that all that stuff was going on. And I don't go to Duke faculty meetings, but I'd be willing to bet you a big chunk of money that few of the divinity faculty would have any sense of the range of these things, their scope, the staffing, the expenditure. I mean, because, you know, faculty meetings, they get a report on one and another. Duke just went through its 10-year review. There was a page, about a page devoted to these centers. If you read carefully, you might figure out that there was a lot there. But I don't think Duke has a sense of this. And to me, what's really interesting is I don't think these several programs collaborate and cooperate with one another in a way that's mutually interfacing and enriching among them and in relationship to the rest of the divinity school. And the same is true across our schools. We've got incredible programs. If you just go, from BU to Claremont and up north and south, our seminaries are doing interesting things. In some cases, the faculty may be fully involved and well apprised of them, but we don't know what one another is doing. We're not cooperating. There are just incredible opportunities, and it's your damn responsibility, because y'all You folks are in the oversight capacity. And Myron and I've had some conversations. By way of thinking, and this last page sort of gets at it. I won't go over that. You can read it if you wish. But what my sense is that probably you presume that we have contexts in which we as faculty are together and talk about these things that are important and ought to be collaborative. And you are hosts for the AUMTS, Association of United Methodist Theological Schools. Deans and presidents get together, but they are concerned about money and how it's going to be divided. And they don't do, I mean, I've been on it, they don't do a lot of talking about programs that might be collaborative and cooperative in nature for self-interested reasons. So my advocacy is to get the dean, the academic deans, however labeled, the chief academic officers together, because they are the ones that have oversight of our programs, and have them thinking together about what can we do that's collaborative and cooperative, and what, how can we be better accountable to the church and enriching of our students and working for the kingdom. And I told Myron this years ago. If you were at Candler, you would have been recruited there by the one person who was in admissions, who went around and admitted people as he rode up and down the southern states. Now I think we must have 10 professionals, 10 folks on full salary in Candler's admissions office. And it helps to recruit folks who are United Methodist, but our admissions office and Duke's big one, and you name all of them, they're not changing the number of vocations for United Methodist ministry or the folks who are going to go through theological education. They're just dividing the pie up. So there's some really interesting, important questions that have to do with how our schools work together on various planes. But it does seem to me that the one having to do with our programming for the church globally is a place where the initiatives are so interesting and so groundbreaking that we ought to find ways for each of the schools to do their thing, but also to as it's appropriate, and funding and other things can be worked out, to welcome collaboration, cooperation, and participation from other schools.